Welcome back to the 2 Months Podcast presented by Shadified Sauna Barbershop. They got 3 locations here in Edmonton. I'm your host, Joshua Marshall, and our guest in the waiting here. He's joined us. I think this is your ninth or 10th time with us, Dregs, but we have TSN Hockey Insider, and he's the co-host of the Ray and Dregs podcast with Ray Ferraro, with Rev Media with Ryan Rashog, and he is also the new best friend of Luke Wilson. So, Dregs, how's it going? How's your friendship with Luke going too?
Yeah,
uh,
I'm doing okay, Josh. Thanks for asking. Aside from, I don't know, you know what? My kids are adults and they're gone for the most part. I mean, my son still lives here, but third week of September, it's just like automatic. You get a head cold or a chest cold or something like that, and that's exactly. We did the Leafs and Ottawa Senators preseason game on Tuesday. And Studio 6 at TSN, it's a remarkable studio. It's just this enormous studio. You see it for CFL games, you see it for regional hockey games, you see it for the World Juniors and all that. You can see how vast it is, right? So you wouldn't think that the ventilation in a room that size would be an issue, but just where the insider's chair is on that set, there's like a vent right above our head. It's like 20 feet above our head, but it blows on you nonstop. And I don't know if it was psychosomatic, but about halfway through the second period, I'm like, I'm coughing and sputtering more so than usual. And by end of third period, post game, I was like, I don't feel good. So I've got that back to school cold that I'm dealing with here as training camps and preseason unfold.
yeah, yeah. Hopefully, I heard you yesterday on. I think it was the other day on the drive there about it too. And I thinking of you there. Yeah, things get better. I think the rest of the crew was
All good, bud.
feeling it too. But obviously, yeah, we're getting going here. Obviously, preseason games are still going on. There's some injuries around the NHL too, but we'll kind of start with Toronto here and kind of what you saw last night. I know you got a game tomorrow night with them, but Easton Cowan kind of earning a spot there, and now see Nick Robinson too with a good showing last night with that nice goal. How do you see this Leafs roster shaping up? Obviously, with the Max Petrie PTO,
Yeah.
wise, how does everything kind of maybe fit in, do you think, with making this team the best it can be on the ice for come?
Yeah, well, there aren't a lot of spots available. That's just the reality of the Maple Leafs and the fact they're a cap team. Max Pacioretty, in my opinion, has a spot to lose. All of us in the insider business believe that there's essentially a verbal agreement in place. Let's just call it the way it is. It'll be a short-term deal. But Max probably wanted to prove to himself that an off season of hard training, which he did, he put in the work, would pay off. And I think that anybody who watched him with the Capitals last year, again, he was coming off yet another just a devastating injury. Kind of saw that he didn't have the same step, right? He didn't have that same jump. And so is he slowing down at the age that he is as a hockey player? Is pace going to be a problem? And based on the limited time we've seen him in Toronto now, pace doesn't appear to be an issue. And the hockey IQ is off the charts. The hands are certainly still there. And I think that in a perfect world, Craig Berube would like to see chemistry develop between John Tavares and Max Pacioretty on that third line. So let's assume that that is going to be how it shakes down. Now you're really looking at maybe one other spot, right, in the bottom six. And I think Nick Robertson's had a real good camp. Yeah, he made one ill-timed plays. He pushed William Nylander, up into the defensive zone, and Nylander ended up getting clobbered. I think he ran into Christian Dvorak's leg, and couldn't finish the game. We're told that he'll be okay, but scored a highlight goal. As Berube keeps describing Nick Robertson, he just hunts down pucks. His feet are moving. He can skate. He's got, again, a good IQ. He can shoot. He's got, and probably most importantly, Josh, is the fact that he too is on a short-term, low-money contract. And when you're paying big cap dollars the way the Maple Leafs are to their top-end guys, you need a player like Nick Robertson to be an impactful piece. And I think the potential is there for him to do that. And then, you mentioned Easton Cowan. That was his best game thus far.
Yeah.
Aside from the game that he played or two in the rookie tournament, he looked like he was aggressive. He was jumping up into the play. He was less worried about the details of being an NHL player and more focused on elevating his level of confidence and just playing with instinct. And that's the way he looked to me last night, by far his best outing. And he's going to have more of that in the remainder of the preseason, because the only other option Toronto has with Easton Cowan is to send him back to the London Knights in the Ontario Hockey League. That's probably where he's going to end up. But if he can play the way he did last night in his continued look here in Toronto, then that'll extend his stay.
Yeah, I thought he looked very confident, even on some of the power play entries. He just kind of, knowing he's a forward entering in on the power play, looked pretty confident in dishing the puck off to Ekman Larson. And so we'll see how that transpires out. Obviously, some unfortunate news out in LA with Drew Doughty. Where are we at here with his injury? Has there kind of been any update that you know of that's official? I know maybe the Kings were waiting for more testing on Thursday, but where are we at with this injury with Doughty? And does that mean we could see, a Shattenkirk or a Justin Schultz signing with the Kings too to fill in that void?
I mean, it's possible. Internally, they also have some options in LA. It's going to be an extended period. What we don't know, and perhaps they'll put it out at some point here today, being Friday, is, are we talking weeks or are we talking months? The Frank Cervelli, indicated that his source described it as a fractured ankle. At least that was the initial phase of the testing and the X-ray and the imaging and whatnot. They were going to go through more of that and do a deeper dive yesterday to, kind of formalize what the prognosis would be. But, it's just one of the unfortunate things that happens in any game. In this case, it's a preseason game, which is why you see clubs going back to Toronto and how precautionary they've been with Austin Matthews, as an example. Linus Ullmark played last night for the Ottawa Senators, but he'd got dinged up early in training camp, and they were being super careful. Well, this is why. Now, you can get hurt in any game. In this case, preseason hockey can be a little bit more reckless because guys are trying to make an impression, or, the structure that the coach is trying to employ isn't quite there yet because you don't have your final roster. In this case, Drew Doughty just got pinned along the wall, and it was just the awkwardness of how he fell that ultimately did the damage to the ankle or to the leg. So you don't replace the Drew Doughty. Maybe they, again, try and fill the void on the short term internally, but if it's longer term, I could see Rob Blake looking outside.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I wonder, where are you at here, Dregs, with this? Obviously the game getting quicker and faster. Do you think, it's a safe for, it still is going to happen in terms of a left defenseman playing the right side, but with the game coming in this faster, quicker, reacting to a play where, you're picking the puck off your backhand, do you think, just because I was thinking, could the Gavrikov play the right side knowing he's a left shot defenseman?
Yeah.
He can't. Obviously, this guy's a very established NHLer, but where are you at with the speed of the game and guys playing their off wings on the back end here?
Well, look, I mean, it's always about the comfort of the player, right? I used to think of Mike Babcock and how he loved having a left side guy, a right side guy, left side, right side, because that's where they were most comfortable. But, you have an abundance of NHL defensemen that are comfortable playing on their offside. It's never perfect, but there are guys capable of doing that. So that's what they need to figure out in Los Angeles. What is the options available to you internally? Do you have that player or those players capable of playing on their offside? Is there somebody out there that is suited to what you need, again, on a shorter term? And that's the thing when you look, Josh, at cap teams. It used to be general managers would be wary of bringing in a piece because it was a problem that you were going to have to eventually deal with, right? Down the road. You always have to comply with the salary cap. Now, general managers and the capologists and the management teams don't look at it that way. They manage their salary cap almost hour by hour, certainly day by day. And the problem that you might have a month from now or 8 weeks from now, depending on the extent of the Doughty injury, is a problem that's 2 months down the road. Why are you worrying about it today? So if you don't have that fix and you don't have that player that is capable of playing on his offside, then again, maybe you do have to look outside. And if there's an affordable player, an experienced player that's out there that you think you can slot in, that's why also you always have managers. And I get this from practically every general manager in the National Hockey League. When you go through their entire training camp roster and then you pare it down and you look at what the roster is probably going to be when you come out of training camp in the preseason, and you ask them, do you have an area of concern? 9 out of 10 of them, Josh, will say it's our depth on defense. 9 out of 10 because of stuff like this that happens. So there's always a way to plug a hole. It's just inevitably when you're a cap team, you run into trouble. But I don't think that Blake is overly concerned, aside from the potential, the long-term absence of a terrific player in Drew Doughty.
Yeah, no, exactly. He's a great player, probably going to be on Team Canada at the Four Nations Cup, obviously, too. So hopefully that injury isn't too long.
Yeah.
Let's move over to some RFA talk. Obviously, Cole Perfetti resigns, and this is a player I believe you know the family very well, too, from your time with the Whitby minor hockey program out there out east. But what can you say about him? Obviously, pretty standing in a way of him representing the Jets at the NHL Media Tour, also a charity event, not having a contract. The contract gets done. Very classy organization. And the Jets, as you know, Mark Chipman's very well respected and a great GM. But how positive was it to get him signed and get him into camp, and important role that he's going to play for this Jets team this year?
Well, look, they needed to find that sweet spot. And for me, this is a Winnipeg Jets win to get Cole Perfetti. For a 2-year bridge at 3.25 annually, gets $3 million this year, 3.5 next year. So that'll help in arbitration from Cole's perspective. But he's been a terrific soldier, right? He went through some tough times last year. He was healthy scratched 11 times, Josh. And that had everything to do with Rick Bowness being a veteran coach, demanding a certain way to play. And he just, the game of Cole Perfetti did not fit the eye of the experienced veteran coach of Rick Bowness. Nothing personal, just the way it all worked out. But that came at the expense of Perfetti, right? I mean, he had 19 goals. I think he had a bonus if he scored 20 of like $200 and some $1,000. So, the fact that he was left at 19 and was scratched 11 times, that would frustrate me as a player or the agent representing this player, but that's the way the business side of hockey works. And no different than any restricted free agent negotiation, seldom are they slam dunks. They just don't work that way. So you've got the agent who initially comes in with a number that's way higher than what they knew was going to be real at the end. And then the team comes in low and the team knows that that's not going to get it done. I don't think that there was ever any animosity here. Frustrations? Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And, you're right. I mean, I've known Cole Perfetti and his family for a long, long time. Our kids grew up together, right? And Cole Perfetti was always that prolific, best player on the ice guy. He just was. And as he had to face and endure adversity at varying times as he's developed. But when you go from your entry-level contract to your second contract, that's when the rubber hits the road, and the negotiation is real and it's business driven. But Cole Perfetti is going to be an excellent Jet. He is. He wants to stay there long term. And so assuming that he continues to develop and put up the numbers this year and next year under the watchful guidance of Scott Arniel, who I know is a big fan of Cole Perfetti, then guess what happens? The leverage shifts over to Perfetti in his camp, as you get through year 2 of this bridge deal. So I know he's thrilled to be back. He never left Winnipeg. He trained there all summer, never left, did everything that he needed to do. He's excellent, community-minded. So I know the family's thrilled that he's back on the ice, and I know Cole is happy to get back and prove that the money they didn't have to invest in him is well worth it.
Yeah, and the Jets fans are going to love him on the ice this year. I think he'll play a very important role, and I agree with everything you said there. Jeremy Swayman, let's move over to the Bruins. Where are we at here with Swayman and the Bruins? Do you think this gets done maybe before the season starts, or any kind of update that you have as of now this morning here?
Well, every time I ask Josh, both sides, the word I get back is consistent: grinding. That's the agent and that's the Bruins. Jeremy Swayman in this case has leverage, right? Even though he too, you're right, is a restricted free agent and there's only so far you can push. But, what do the Boston Bruins have for an option? I guess Jonas Korpisalo, who looked good the other night, can give them a decent start. But, Are you really, willing to, we've heard Don Sweeney, the general manager, throw out the December 1st deadline a few times now. I guess. I mean, that's true. That's real. That's collective bargained. But there's no way they traded Linus Hallmark and didn't know or believe and expect that they were going to extend Jeremy Swayman as the Boston Bruins' true number one goaltender. And they probably knew that it wasn't going to be easy. And I can appreciate the team side of this too. I mean, we can spout out numbers, Josh, of what we think is being exchanged. And that's why you had Don Sweeney come out recently and he wasn't happy with Ryan Whitney and Spittin' Chicklets, for saying what he said, reporting what he reported. So what is it? I mean, is it the McAvoy contract at 9.5 that's going to get this deal done? Now you make comparables, right? That's what every team does. Connor Hellebuyck, we just talked about Cole Perfetti and the Winnipeg Jets. Connor Hellebuyck is signed at $8.5 million annual average salary. This guy wins Vezina trophies. I mean, so if I'm the Boston Bruins, I'm telling Louis Gross, the agent for Jeremy Swayman, he's not getting 9.5. Sorry. So where are they? Is the gap as significant as some think it is? It probably is, but at some point, both sides are going to have to recognize that in the best interest of the player and of the organization, you got to find that happy place. And I can't imagine that the Bruins are too far off a number that Jeremy Swayman can live with. So they still have time before the start of the regular season, but once the regular season kicks in, and if he's not in camp at that point, then it becomes problematic from a team result perspective.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, we saw the run-in defenseman getting paid in that 9.5 range to 8.5 range. With Shesterkin coming up too, obviously Swayman will be the one that maybe sets the bar here, but do you think we got a brace for this in the National Hockey League? Obviously, we've seen, Bobrovsky's at 10 million, Carey Price was at 10 million, so it has been there before. But is that number going to get higher in terms of the Shesterkin deal?
Yeah, I mean, Igor Shesterkin is going to set the benchmark. He will, and that's well earned. I mean, who would argue that? Carey Price at 10.5 isn't playing in the National Hockey League again. We know this. So again, where's the middle ground if you're the New York Rangers and Shesterkin? Is it 11.25? Is it 11.5? Is it 12? That's what's going on now. Shesterkin has made it fairly clear, reportedly, he doesn't want to negotiate once the regular season begins. But is that hard and fast? Is that a line drawn in sand? Look, the New York Rangers know that they're going to have to pay this guy. They're fine with it, but whatever that number is, it can't be good for the New York Rangers, or it would be done by now. So they're in a delicate spot, and maybe that's why Swayman is also waiting. Let's see what Shesterkin gets, and then they use him as a comp, and maybe Hellebuyck and some of the other top paid goaltenders are kind of balanced in there, and then Swayman kind of cherry picks where he sees he fits. I think that Shesterkin and the Rangers are going to close that gap prior to the start of the regular season, but there's no guarantee of that, and I think it's somewhere between 11.25 and 11.5. I think that gets it done.
Yeah, I'd agree there for sure. Let's move out west out here. The Oilers, not the greatest preseason that they probably want, but at the end of the day, I don't think how much we really judge preseason games. Obviously you're not having a veteran lineup to start the first week, usually say in the second week, but where are you at with their back end? Obviously, with losing CC and a couple other guys on the back end and Broberg, Emberson's going to have an opportunity. Josh Brown's going to have an opportunity. Troy Stetcher's going to have an opportunity internally. They could look outside, but are you concerned with the back end here, or are you pretty confident that they can get by until the trade deadline to upgrade in that position?
Well, I'm not concerned. But if I were an Oilers fan, I'd be concerned. I mean, what I'm seeing in terms of some of the guys that you mentioned, are they capable? Sure. Are they going to move the needle? Probably not. What's going to move the needle, Josh, is Darnell Nurse. And, this is a tough one because we know Nurse isn't healthy, right? And when you don't feel 100%, that takes a mental and obviously a physical toll as well. But he needs to be way better than what he was last year, the year before. Wire to wire, he needs to be better. And if he is, then I think that covers off a lot of ground. Evan Bouchard, I don't think that anybody is going to question what he's going to bring to the table, and that too, in and of itself, is a concern because he's on the cusp of needing a new contract. And when you talk about big paid defensemen, well, Bush is going to fit into that category and probably is in that category. And there's no reason to think that he's going backwards. He just won't. So the advantage that the Oilers have is they've got some top end guys, Ekholm, of course, throw into that equation, that are big minute men. So they shoulder the majority of the load. But no different than what we talked about in LA, go down the list of all of these teams, Toronto, Ottawa. I mean, go down the list. Every team has a concern with that lack of depth on the blue line. And, trying to cherry pick and find a guy that's on a scrap heap somewhere, it's difficult. But what you'll see here, though, Josh, is again, as camps come to an end, preseasons end, final rosters are submitted, maybe there's a deal to be had out there. Maybe there's a piece that we're not sure about that ticks a lot of boxes. I had a conversation, this guy isn't available, so don't misinterpret what I'm about to say. I had a conversation with Steve Staios the other day, and we were talking about Travis Hamonic, who got his knee cleaned up, so he's healthy. 35-year-old defenseman, right shot defenseman who is worth his weight in gold right now. He'll be on that third pair in Ottawa. Tyler Cleven, who they've been incredibly patient with, is going to advance from Belleville, and he'll play third pair, and he'll get mentored by Hamonic. But what if you get closer to the trade deadline? Things aren't going as well as you hoped. Maybe there's an opportunity to move a Hamonic. So my point is there are always pieces available out there, and Stan Bowman is as motivated as any GM on the planet. So I think it's a concern defensively. I know I'm long-winded in trying to meander through all this. I think it's a concern, but probably covered up by the top end talent they have on the blue line.
Yeah, I'm very high on Travis Hamonic, super high. Obviously, I lost my father at a young age. He did too, and I got to meet him not too long ago, and during his Hammer D partner program that he hosts kids that have lost a parent, and these after games, and these are kids he brings in, and when he's with the Flames, him and my brothers and I went to go meet him after a game. And,
nice.
We're in our 30s at that point, so just a stand-up person. A quality person. So good to hear, he's healthy, he's getting back, and we'll see where it happens. And maybe he's a big part of their end if they make the playoffs, because the Sens are, going to push for that opportunity this year. Where are you at with the Flames? I know you and Dregs, and we're kind of talking about it on the Ray and Dregs podcast yesterday that came out. So people can check that out on Apple Podcast and Spotify and all the other podcast platforms. But I'm bullish on the Flames here, but I think for some reason, I don't know why, I believe that they could push for a playoff spot. I'm just dating back to Michael Backlund saying at the start of training camp, this team could remind him of the 2014-15 team where they were the comeback kids, and they could push for a playoff spot at that point then too. But it's going to be an uphill battle. But if they get some solid goaltending, they're going to be a pretty good team, and they do have a pretty good goaltender in Wolf. In the back, the American Hockey League goaltender for 2 years in a row. But there'll probably be some growing pains. But if Huberdeau plays good, Wolf plays good, and the back end holds up, maybe they can kind of surpass expectations here, Dregs. Or are you thinking they could be a team that still isn't decently in that rebuild process, where a couple of years like this could not be bad for the team of getting some high draft picks too?
Well, the problem for Calgary, Josh, is they can't be in the middle, right? And I think Ray talked about that as part of the podcast. Being in the middle doesn't help you with anything.
No,
doesn't help you with the draft. Doesn't help your fan base. Ownership is antsy because when you're in the middle, they feel like, okay, we'll add a piece. Let's try and make that push. I don't see it from Calgary's perspective, but I am intrigued by a couple of the players that you've talked about. I think Dustin Wolf is going to be a terrific NHL goaltender. I don't know that he's ready to be, that right now,
Yeah.
but I do think that he has the toolbox to be that, and you've got Vladar there as well. So yeah, it's fair to question goaltending until there's no reason to. It's gonna come down to what can Huberdeau and Nazem Kadri do? How can they lead this group? The leadership there is fine. Michael Backlund is on a shorter term here now. Could he be a piece in play? I'm more leaning to the side of continued renovating in Calgary than building on what they have. But a lot can change that direction. What about a quick start? What if they get out of the gate first 10, 15, 20 games, they've overachieved. Now what do you do? And that might not be best case scenario for Craig Conroy, but it is about winning. And the Philadelphia Flyers went through something similar last year. You always keep your trade options open, and you keep having conversations about moving pieces that really doesn't make sense if you're trying to stay in the fight. But it does make sense when you're looking for the greater good and the long-term success and rebuild of an organization. And Calgary doesn't seem to have the appetite for that just yet, even though I know that internally they've had all kinds of debates. And this going back previous to the trade deadline and certainly into the offseason about the assets that they should be selling off. So, I think that we're going to speculate a lot, on the future of Nazem Kadri, who would be easily traded. He's a valued player, but he even tried to close that door a week or so ago, right? When he's, well, let's not talk about that. We're here. We're committed to Calgary. We want to have a good run here. So there's a lot of question marks around this organization. So definitively, I can't tell you that I think that they've got a chance or they don't have a chance. I think the problem is they're good enough to be better than they need to be. But I don't see them being good enough to challenge for a playoff spot.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes for sure. Let's finish up on the San Jose Sharks. Kind of reason I want to talk about them. Obviously, a couple friends of our podcast, they're on that team now with Tyler Toffoli signing a big deal there, and then Matt Benning too. But some intriguing players to watch, and Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini. I think Mike Greer's done a good job this offseason to bringing some veteran presence in. I don't think they'll be a playoffs team, but do you think they'll be a lot more competitive than they were last year based on health? If they're healthy, they should be somewhat a little bit better, but still some definitely growing pains. And where are you at with, Smith and Celebrini coming into the National Hockey League? It's going to be a tough transition, but they're going to be some exciting players to watch for the younger kids and us as fans too.
Well, that's what it boils down to, Josh. From a fan perspective, it's a worthwhile watch now, right? We would do San Jose games, or you're watching on a night where there's not a whole lot going on. And with all due respect to those players and the staff and Mike Greer, it was an eye roll. You're looking at this team last year going, oh boy, like we know what they're trying to do. It's abundantly obvious, but you still have to get through the regular season. So the heavy lifting isn't over yet because as we see in Chicago, they've got to now piece together a competitive team and a team that is going to make sure that Connor Bedard is flanked by players who can play with him and help him develop. Well, that's now the MO for Mike Greer is to make sure that Macklin Celebrini is insulated, right? There's going to be growing pains there. They're going to have tough times ahead, but I think that Chicago is more or less now a template for how you usher in these top draft picks, these really good young players. And that's to make sure that you surround them with guys who can still skate, and most veteran players can skate. If you're in the National Hockey League, you can skate. But you have to be high character to make sure that Macklin Celebrini, I don't think the training is going to be an issue for him. He's grown up in that world of elite training and sport. So I don't think he's ever going to need extra motivation, but that'll be the challenge for Greer, is to make sure that those good young pieces are surrounded by players who can play. Yes, of course, but good high character community people who, help lead these guys to a place where now they can give back in that sense. So I think the Sharks will be more fun to watch than we've seen in a while, but mostly because of a couple of individual players and stories.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Dregs, have a great weekend here. Thanks for joining us this week on the Too Much Podcast to kick the season off, and we'll look forward to catching up with you throughout the season. And all the best to you and your family throughout this great hockey season coming above. And thanks for everything you do for us here at the Too Much Podcast as well. We really appreciate it. So.
All right, buddy. Well, thanks for having me. Next time I'm in Edmonton or the Edmonton area, I'm going to stop by Shadified and get coiffed like
Yes.
You're nice and tight on the walls there, buddy. It's
Yeah.
looking good.
I try to copy the O-Dog in a way, but yeah. But yeah, no, we'll take care of you at Shadified. They are the official barber of the Northers too. So you'll get the same guy that's cutting McDavid's hair can cut your hair.
Nice.
So yeah, so awesome. Thanks, Dregs. Have a good one. All
right, buddy.
Thanks to Darren Dreger for joining us again on the 2 Months Podcast this morning. So that was a pretty good interview, I think. We touched on a lot of topics, some news and notes around the National Hockey League, some teams too. So we'll see how the training camp process plays itself out. It'll be fun to see how some kids earning some opportunities, some jobs, getting some extra looks, and battling for spots in the National Hockey League, the show as they like to call. But yeah, looking forward to opportunities there and some storylines as training camp goes into week 2, how that process plays itself out. We'll have some more interviews coming up next week. Got some good things kind of working out here. Just a few things to touch on, not too much to go into too many details. There is some process to still go through, but I know earlier we talked about in some previous episodes about an event that we're going to do on Monday, October 21st. That was going to be with the Southside Athletic Club, so that won't be with the Southside Athletic Club anymore. Some new news to report on that. There is a few other clubs we're working with that have reached out to us that are very interested in hosting this event with us. So we're just going to kind of see how that process plays itself out in the weekend and just having some more conversations there. And we'll end up picking maybe one of the clubs to work with. So there's a lot of good ones around the city and in the outskirts of the city too. I was an assistant coach, no longer with that staff and that organization no more. So I have reported my complaint towards Hockey Canada, Hockey Alberta. So I'll always stand up for injustice for kids that are being mistreated and not treated fairly. Their mental health matters, just like everyone's mental health matters. So I think there's some good people in that organization, 1000%. I'm not going to totally judge this situation on someone's character. There was obviously some miscommunication that went on. One coach resigned. I stood up for what I believe in. I was dismissed because I was standing up for injustice acts towards 4 kids on the team. Interesting enough, about 2 weeks ago, Leduc Minor Hockey, their U15 AAA coach, same thing that's going on here. He was actually fired for doing the same thing. So there is a precedent already, and it's very fresh in everyone's mind. So the U15 AAA coach in Leduc, was removed for the similar situation. And so, we'll let the due process play itself out. The complaint has been put forward to Hockey Canada and Hockey Alberta. I have heard back from both. Some more conversations will continue to happen. So, before I go too public with everything, just letting you know that we still will do this event. We just won't be doing it with Southside, and we're still standing up for, everyone's mental health. And we'll let the Hockey Canada and Hockey Alberta do their due process. It looks like Hockey Canada is going to kind of take over this investigation in the conversations I had with them. So they'll be doing their process, and once that process comes out and an investigation is final, then maybe we can speak more on it. But very concerning that these things are still happening in minor hockey. And then there is already a precedent that's pretty fresh in everyone's mind that has happened. So there is some some of that there to chew on. But do think there's a lot of good people in hockey, and we'll see how this situation plays itself out. And we're always kind of going to stand up for the kids. We've over the last 5-6 years with this podcast, we've taken over 1,000 minor hockey players to Edmonton Oilers practices, to Calgary Flames practices, Devils, Kings, Islanders, many other NHL teams, Stars. So it's something we continue to work with, and working with teams in the city to bring their kids the opportunity to meeting some NHL players and watching NHL practices and meeting some coaches and getting some stuff there. But yeah, we'll do that. Can continue to keep doing that throughout the hockey season to come. And obviously people seen some videos on our Instagram account, and some NHL players sticking up and standing up for all this stuff too. And in terms of always being there to support and guide the process through. And we've created a platform here where we're always going to stand up for those that need our support. So when you reach out to ask for support, we will always be there to help you through that process. So yeah, we'll see how this next couple of weeks play out. But that's just an update there. We're still going to be doing the event. It's still going to be a very successful event. There'll be some great money raised for the Sheldon Kennedy Center of Excellence in Red Deer and the Kids Sport Alberta too. So very positive things to report on that front. And yeah, we'll hunker down a organization to work with. There's a few that we're in chats with, and yeah, we'll make that announcement once that's official, and work with those great organizations too. So maybe there's just more than one we work with. But yeah, anyways, that's where an update is there. And stay positive. And there's people in Hockey Canada, Hockey Alberta to do these investigations for a reason. So obviously there's a process to putting things forward, but definitely concerning. And yeah, we'll again keep the wheel moving, and hopefully better days are coming. We're always thinking of those kids that were affected by the mistreatment and the unfairness that they had during a trial process. That is not fair, and fortunately it's still happening, but we can still do better, and everyone can do better on that front too. And that goes for every single person involved. So it's just not blamed on one person or multiple people. It's a whole group where we just all need to be better. And we'll move forward there. And that's all I'll say on that. We'll have an update very, very soon to comment more on everything. Thank you.